Guys, it's Eric. Okay, we're going to talk today about the relationship between empaths and envious people. Indeed, the empath may draw in the envious person. Now, if you've read up on or watched videos or listened to podcasts about this topic, you've probably, or in all likelihood, come across the inevitable intersection between empaths and narcissists, which is a neighboring or sibling or adjacent concept. But in today's discussion, we will hinge our focus on envy, since that's the crux of what these videos focus on. I want to discuss what happens there with empaths and envious people, empaths drawing in envious people on two levels. I want to talk about the psychological level and more of like the non-local consciousness level, like the energetics of what's going on in that interaction. First of all, psychologically, I think the reason, if you're an empath, your prey for the envy of others is because you are signaling on some subterranean or perhaps overt and open above board level that you're open, that you're being an empath. It means you're sort of, I was going to say your signal is open. That's true, but that sounds like you're sending something outward. It's more like you're an open recipient of the emotions of others. You know, you are pro-social and socially wired and oriented in that particular way. You're just open to the life experience. You feel for people, and it's not necessarily just individual people. It can be settings and situations. Being an empath, as you traverse the world and you go about your day, you are sopping up the emotions and energies of others. Now, the reason that draws the ire and first the attention and then the ire of envious people is because they're not open in that way. They're more narrow, closed, constricted, whether they know it or not. They might not be conscious of it, but what they are more conscious of is the fact that somewhere in their formative frame, in their early years, somebody was cruel enough to them to make them unconsciously assemble their psychology, their psyche, their personality in just such a way they are front-loading the ego. So that's what the envious person is doing. They're leading with their ego. And I want to use very specific and careful language when I talk about the ego, because I don't think there's anything necessarily taboo against having a strong ego. Quite the contrary. I think having a strong ego is a good survival tool. You know, it's confidence. It's the part of you that can rise to the occasion or attend to a certain task or series of tasks, or whether they're big or small in the course of your life, and accomplish, and, you know, ideally for the betterment of oneself and others. And I characterize the ability to traverse life in that way as perhaps indicative of a strong ego. A lot of people always talk about a big ego, and of course we're parsing semantics here, but whether you want to say big ego or not, I think where people get themselves into trouble socially, and also where they get off their desired path in life, is when they lead with their ego, when they go into situations and the ego is out in front. It's doing all the talking. It's making all the decisions. It's all, in other words, me, me, me. And that's generally somebody that's, number one, narcissistic, and number two, prone to envy, as narcissists tend to be. So there they are in their formative frame, their younger years, and in their household or somebody in their life near to them is adequately cruel or harsh or abusive or depriving of love and affection, that this individual ends up leading with their ego. It's like they end up building themselves in a way that is dysfunctional. And I'm trying to speak compassionately at the moment, but it's dysfunctional in the sense that it doesn't serve them. It's an excess of ego, and along with that comes envy. And there you are. Perhaps you were never subject to such abuse, or perhaps if you were, you didn't come out of it in this constricted, ego-led format. You're more, you still have your empathy intact, and with that comes a sort of childlike innocence. And you're navigating the world open to people, to experiences, to emotions, to the flow of things. And the envious person sees that, and they admire it, and they like it, and they want to be a part of it. That's the initial interaction. That's why, as I've said in other videos, it starts with praise and compliments. And that can all seem well and good, but as the interaction unfolds and the relationship deepens, the empath will be like, oh, wow, like my light is now getting dimmer because of the ongoing interaction with this person and their envy. It's because the envious person, again, is narrow, constricted, ego-focused. Their whole world is hinged on their ego. Me, me, me. What can I get for myself? Where do I stand to benefit in this scenario? They're looking at you, and they're not sensing that that's how you're built or designed. that sort of makes them resentful, and they want to like sort of prove that, no, you really are operating on that level. That's part of what's going on. The other part of what's going on with them is whether or not they want to prove that you're just like them. They certainly want to stop feeling threatened by you. So that's all the psychological dynamic. That's why if you're an empath, you're easy prey for an envious person. So it's not a question, if you're walking through the world as an empath, of dimming your light, or of adjusting yourself in such a way where you're more ego-driven, because that's not going to help anybody, let alone you. But I would say just to be mindful that, certain people that don't necessarily have that ingrained openness are going to be drawn to you. And then there's the energetic component. In terms of the energetic component, as annoying and difficult as it is to think about and talk about people that are ruled by envy, this is kind of fun to think about, because this happens in every relationship between somebody who's envious and somebody who's being envied. At a certain point, the person who's being envied is sort of marveling over the fact that the relationship has become so obviously characterized and painted over with hatred emanating from the envious person, that they're like, how are we going on this way? How are both of us agreeing and consenting to pretend and engage in theatrics to uphold the illusion that everything's actually fine when it feels completely less than fine? I just want to point out that this is an overriding energetic dynamic. This exists at a more psychic level. In terms of when you talk about an empath, you're talking about somebody that's, sort of seeing the unseen. The empath is accustomed to those circuits being open to feeling all things, and certainly feeling how other people feel. The envious person is not. Like I said before, they're narrow and constricted, and not only are they leading with their ego, but they can't pick up on all the things around them. Like their radar beam is not open in just such a way where any of that information is coming to them intuitively. So it's kind of amazing how as the empath and envious person relationship unfolds, it's remarkable how on the envious person side of the equation, they can persist and subsist over time through the relationship, upholding this very thin facade illusion that everything's normal, where the envious person, where the empath, unbeknownst to the envious person, is suffering the entire time. And just like their light has gone dim on an energetic level, all their energy is being sucked. And meanwhile, the envious person is just playing this very ego-driven game. So it's kind of fun to talk about, because I have a feeling that a lot of you will relate to that, since you've been on the envied side of the equation if you're watching these videos, where it's like, wait, how are we now in the second year of this bullshit where this person is pretending everything's fine and they're constantly nitpicking, criticizing, tearing apart, tearing down, and just like radiating hatred? And that's why, because their ego is in the way of any sort of clear, grounded, sober assessment on their part that they might indeed be giving themselves away. But hopefully in the course of talking about it and sharing about it and reflecting on it, we can sort of lift that veil.